Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen here, Rashbi, with this week's 10-Minute Torah. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you had a great 4th of July. Other than that, I know it's the summer. Things are a little slow. Everybody's on vacation, so I hope you're enjoying your vacation. Still would like to see you in services. I miss you. And we're actually starting to prepare for the high holidays. How about that? Now, the high holidays, this being a leap year, come a little bit later this year. It's coming up in October, beginning of October. So we got a little bit of time, but you never know. Okay. So, hope you're doing well. This week we are on Parashat Chukat. Chukat means decree. And the decree that to which they are referring is the decree of the red heifer. So when somebody becomes contaminated, and when somebody dies, it's a mitzvah to do the final preparation of the body for burial. It sounds a little creepy and everything, doesn't it? But, it's such a great mitzvah because it's one of those things where the person for whom you're doing the mitzvah can never repay you. I saw somebody put a post on Facebook recently where she was talking about having to put she's a young person, so she was putting her life on hold, her career on hold, to help take care of her parents. And that's a great mitzvah. I mean, think about it. You're being a caregiver for people who are probably in the last few remaining time of their life. And again, you're just at their service, and they probably won't be able to repay you other than smiling and saying thank you, even though they're parents. And what a great way to honor father and mother, to do something like that, right? So this is some of the things that Judaism holds dear. So when a person becomes contaminated by doing the final care of a person's body, they are ritually, spiritually contaminated. Okay, there was a little misunderstanding a few years ago. Somebody thought that they had done something wrong because they were contaminated. No, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just a spiritual contamination. That's all it is. And as part of the process of dealing with that, that person would, yes, have to go outside the camp for about 7 days, but you would also need a red heifer, a cow with all red hairs, 2 non-red hairs, and the animal is disqualified. The animal is sacrificed, ritually, of course, and the animal is burned completely. It's like an elevation offering. And the ashes are part of the cleansing of the person. Interestingly enough, and this is where a lot of the commentary comes in, the person who prepares the heifer to decontaminate the person who is spiritually contaminated becomes contaminated themselves. So you're doing a mitzvah for a person, and you're being contaminated yourself. And you just, again, it's a 7-day confinement, quarantine, a 7-day quarantine, as you will, outside the camp. And the reason it's a decree, here's the difference between a chukat and a mishpat, a decree and a judgment. A judgment is done off of something that's pretty concrete. You can look at the evidence. You can say, okay, don't steal. Well, that's pretty basic. Somebody owns their stuff. God has allowed that person to have that as part of their life's path, and you're not supposed to take any of that because it's not yours. Pretty easy, right? But this whole idea of a red cow, why a red cow? Why not any other cow? Say, it's a hukat. A decree is beyond human discernment. We don't know why. We just know that this is one of the things that God says we do, so we do it. So this is part of the portion. And the other thing that people talk about is, why is it here in the Torah? We just got banished. We just got a 40-year sentence to die off in the wilderness, and all of a sudden we're talking about a red cow. Where does that come in? Well, there's sort of a flow to the Torah that's not necessarily chronological, because a lot of people feel that this is something that was given years ago. See, now it's almost like 38 years in the wilderness in Numbers, and this is why a lot of this contention is happening. The people are very restless. We sent the spies out. They didn't want to. They were scared. They came back, and now we're talking about a red cow. It's kind of out of place. Some people say, well, no, there's a chronology to it. It's not 38 years yet. We're still there in the desert. So, but why throw this idea of the red cow in? Okay. let's talk about what comes next. And maybe this will show a little bit of the flow, because a lot of you can see by following these vlogs that I do that I'm very big on the flow of the Torah. Why it goes from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. Where's the intelligence in the actual flow? So we have the spies, we have the Chukat, the red heifer, and now Aaron dies. Okay, so he's told he does his very last officiating as the Kohen Gadol, as the high priest. Moses and his son Eleazar go up to a mountain where he goes to a cave. He lays down, very comfortable, light a candle, and God pulls the soul out of his body, as the Talmud describes it, the way somebody would pull a whisker out of a glass of milk. Very painless, non-traumatic. And people say, because he wasn't attached to the material world the way a lot of us are. Why are we afraid of dying? Because we're attached to people, places, things, wealth, whatever it is. See? And we don't want to leave it. We become attached to it. Aaron wasn't. So it was very easy for him to go from life to the world to come. And as part of that, Eleazar is dressed in his the high priest vestments. And now Eleazar is the high priest. So he comes down, and now there's no water. And the people are contending with Moses again. We want water. God's deserted us. So God tells Moses, and here's that famous story, go speak to the rock. Now they say go speak to the rock. Which rock? Moses wasn't sure, and the sages say he should have gone to different rocks. Is it you? Is it you? Is it whatever he was going to say? Bring forth water, whatever. And the rock was supposedly a specific rock that's been used before. And instead of talking to the rock, what does he do? He says, okay, rebels, here's your water. Takes his stick and bam, smacks the rock. Nothing happens, smacks it again. There is a torrent of water. And God says, you did not sanctify my name, so you are doomed to stay out in the wilderness and die off with the rest of the people. You will not enter the promised land. There's a lot of reasons that the sages give for this happening. One of the sages say, well, when he first showed up in Midian, when he ran away from Egypt after killing the Egyptian taskmaster that was beating a Hebrew, they said, oh, there's this man from Egypt. He's an Egyptian. And Moses didn't say, well, actually, I'm really a Hebrew. He didn't correct them. The second is that he struck the rock instead of speaking to it. That's the obvious thing. He didn't follow God's directions. But God says, you did not sanctify my name. So what does that mean? And why didn't he sanctify the name? And this is where we want to go with this for this week's 10-minute Torah vlog. Some people say because he didn't follow God's instructions in full view of the Kalal Yisrael and follow the children of Israel, and he disobeyed God, and God just had to set an example. You're a prophet, you're the main guy, we hold you to a higher standard. So that's the way it is. But the idea is sanctification. How did Moses not sanctify? Well, when we pray, what are we doing? We're sanctifying food. When we say the motzi over bread, the halechem, which in a hamotzi lechem for the challah, we're making the mundane holy. We're making the physical more spiritual. So perhaps that lends a clue to the fact that Moses did not honor God by praying, by thanking God for the water. We thank God for the water. And by the way, the prayer for water, there's no specific prayer for before you drink water. It's that brings kol yiyeh bidvaro, that brings everything into existence. That's the prayer, and that's the prayer. It's kind of like a default prayer. If you don't know what to say, that's the one you use. Brings everything into existence. So perhaps Moses, cut himself off in a way from God. But the other thing is, he says, here's your rebels, here's your water. He was angry. That's another thing. Why the sages talk about anger. What does anger do? Okay, the purpose of anger, the physiological purpose of anger, let's look at this physiologically or anthropologically, is to give you that oomph. Okay, it's to help you meet a challenge. It's like the adrenaline rush. It gets you that adrenaline rush, and if you got back then, if you've got a wild beast you're facing, or if you have to do a task, you get angry and you get all that adrenaline going, and bam, you've got this like almost superhuman strength and this focus, and bam, you can do it. But Moses became angry. Instead of sanctifying God's name, he reverted to a very base human emotion. What happens when we get angry, folks? We lose our wisdom, our knowledge. We're at the mercy of our emotions. And this is a big lesson here. Maybe we should talk about it more in those terms. And I think my sermon will be about anger, how that separates us from doing the right thing, because it just, when we get angry, what do we want to do, right? We want to take revenge. We want to do something, based on vindication or something like that, instead of taking that breath, counting to three. Okay, let's reconsider this in a more calm, more intelligent, specific manner. So let's take that lesson out of this portion. Don't get angry. Don't beat the rock, right? Think about it. Say it with me. Don't beat the rock. Count to three before you react, and just take a time out. Shabbat Shalom. See you in services. And thanks again, as usual, for listening. Appreciate it.